In this video, we're going to talk about EOS. First off, what does that stand for? The Entrepreneurial Operating System, although we just always refer to it as EOS. Essentially what it is, though, is Penguin's operating system that we use to run our company and to solve all the problems. A little bit more in detail, EOS is a system that pushes the company to operate like a well-oiled machine. EOS creates a way in which every single problem, every challenge, every part or aspect of the company that is not running smoothly can be addressed and overcome in a systematic, organized, methodical way. EOS also creates an exact system and a very detailed, articulated system in which the company can identify and capitalize on new opportunities and respond to threats. Obviously, this is a phenomenal system, and it's the system by which we run our company. So let's go into EOS a little bit more in detail, and you'll see when we're done with this video exactly how EOS does all of these miraculous things that I just talked about. Let's start with the basic concept. The basic concept is you want to start with a long-term goal and you want to break it down. In order to achieve anything, which is essentially what EOS is a system by which the company achieves stuff. By which we say, this is what we want to do, and then we actually do that. Okay? So basically what EOS is a system where we start with a broad goal, which we call a 10-year target and a 3-year picture. So we start with a 10-year goal, essentially, which we only refer to as a target, and a 3-year goal, which is what we call a picture. So those are really broad. I mean, you think about a 10-year goal, that's something that's really far out there, and there would be a billion things that have to be done in order to achieve a 10-year goal. But that's what you start with, a long-term goal. And then EOS breaks that long, huge, great big, illustrious goal, the 10-year target, that huge mammoth of an idea, and it says, what do we need to do this year? And it sets a single annual goal based on the long-term picture, the long-term goals. The next thing that it does is it takes that 1-year goal and it breaks it down into a quarterly goal, which we call a rock. So a 1-year goal, although it's not quite as huge and as mammoth as a 10-year goal, it's still pretty big. I mean, there's a million things that have to be done in order for an organization to achieve an annual goal. And so we take that big annual goal and we break it down into this smaller goal, which we call a rock. And then the system takes those quarterly rocks and it breaks those quarterlies down into what we call a WPL, or a weekly priority list. And then every single individual of the leadership team has their own WPL. And as you can see, each one builds on the other. So if I just said it in reverse order, you look at the big term goal and you break that down and you say, okay, what do we need to do this year? And then what do we need to do this quarter? And then what do we need to do this week in our weekly priority list? And then the weekly priority list is broken down into, what do I need to do today? And then what do I need to do this minute or right now? But it also works the other way, meaning that if you achieve your weekly priority list consistently, then you'll achieve your rocks, your quarterly goals. And if you achieve all of your quarterly goals, you'll achieve your annual goals. And if you achieve all your annual goals, essentially and eventually you will achieve your long-term goals. So they build in both ways. The other thing is the concept within this organization, and EOS requires this, that we use specific terms, and we do that to dispel ambiguity. So a lot of organizations, they just say, this is my 3-year goal, or this is my 10-year goal, or this is my 1-year goal. We don't do that. We have specific terminology for every kind of goal. So we never call a quarterly goal a goal. A quarterly is always a rock. There's no such thing as a weekly goal in our organization. A weekly goal is a WPL. It's a weekly priority. And the long-term goals are not goals. They're either a 10-year target or a 3-year picture. And it's just nice because within the organization, when we talk, if somebody says a goal, we know they're talking about an annual. If somebody says a rock, we know they're talking about a quarterly. And so in this slide, because I'm introducing it to you, I've used the word goal to reference a quarterly rock, but from this point forward, I will never do that. If I'm talking about a quarterly, I will call it a rock. If I'm talking about a weekly or it's something that you have to do each day, I'm going to refer to the WPLs, meaning it's the priorities, the weekly priorities, or a DPL, which is a daily priority. If I'm talking about a long-term thing that we want to achieve, I'm going to call it a target or a picture, a 10-year target or a 3-year picture. So specific terms. Let's move on. Other concepts, other ideas that are associated with this EOS system that we use. First, once the goal is set, it's set. Once the rock is set, it's set. Once rocks are set, we don't change them. Once the goal is set, it's the goal. We don't change it. That's important because in achieving goals, in order to have traction and achieve the goal, you have to have discipline and force yourself to say, this is what I'm going to achieve. And then you don't want to get halfway there and then say, oh, well, I changed my mind. Or, well, it turns out that's not important. I'm going to do something else. Because if you do that, you'll be like a ship at sea that's just constantly changing course, and you'll never get anywhere. You'll just go around in circles. And it's the same way with an organization. So once a goal or a rock is set, that's it. It's set, and it's not going to get changed. Also, another concept is absolute commitment to the goal or to the rock. So everybody gets together in leadership meetings that we're going to talk about and planning meetings that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But when we get together, we debate and we decide what we want to do. But once we decide this is what we want to do, then that's what we do. We get it done. And we're absolutely committed to achieving it. The next concept is a culture of close is not good enough. So when we set rocks, we're developing a culture, and we want to maintain a culture that says once your rock is set, you have to achieve it. And almost is not good enough. Whatever it takes, you have to achieve that benchmark that we have set as an organization and that you have set as an individual. Now, WPLs, the reason we call WPLs priorities is because there is a little bit of room for change on a day-to-day basis, which is why we don't do daily goals of any kind. We don't really set DPLs. I mean, individuals can, but we don't as an organization. And so you just have this weekly thing that you have to get done. So if Tuesday doesn't go the way you want it, that's fine. You can make up for it on Wednesday, and that's okay. Or even if the weeklies don't quite go as you wanted as a whole, like you have just one week where you got hit with a bunch of stuff, that's okay as long as you achieve your rocks. So the rocks are the real thing that we really track on an ongoing basis. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to go into this a little bit more in detail, a little deeper. EOS. How it works, how specifically. So I've given you the basic concept that EOS takes a big idea, big concept, and a mammoth goal and breaks it down into small little steps. How exactly does that work? Well, we use a program called Monday. Monday.com. I hate the name, by the way. I think it's dumb. It makes us so we're like, hey, did you put that on Monday? Or did you do that on Monday? It just makes it confusing. But that aside, I can get over that because other than it's got a stupid name, it is a pretty good program. It's a collaborative task management program that we use. And it's got a bunch of folders in it where we can log certain things. And so one of the folders that we use is called a long-term issues list. Another one's called the level 10 issues list, and the next one's called a list of all rocks. So we're going to go into that right now. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. This is the program, Monday.com, and you can see right here we've got our Spring Rocks 2020, which is when I'm making this video. And so you could open that up and you can see all the rocks that we've set. We can go ahead and close those. You've got our Penguin Winter Rocks from last year. It's still in there. Long-term issues list right here in the level 10 issues list. So you can click on this and here we can add more problems. So we can, right here, we can add an issue that we're dealing with. So that's how it works. I'm just going to do test and then I'm going to show you something. Once you add this, then you can go ahead and click on it and you can add updates or info and stuff like that. So you can collaborate with other people. I can put, some sort of comment here and then somebody else can come along and put another comment. I'm going to go ahead and archive that. I'm going to go ahead and delete that just because I just did that for the sake of this video. Same thing with the issues list, and it has a list of all rocks, and so this is where they all go. It's also got these orange ones are WPLs, so Victor's WPL, Jamie's WPL, Andrew's and Matt's WPLs are all in here. So that's the program as far as the technology that we use to operate EOS. Now let's go even a little bit more deeper in how this works. EOS calls for several specific set meetings. Like I said, we set a 10-year target and a 3-year picture. We set a goal. We set a quarterly rock. We set WPLs. When do we do those? Well, we do those in the EOS meetings. And typically who attends the meetings are the leadership team members that are associated with that specific meeting. So we start with an annual planning, and that's done every single year. Right now, Penguin is doing that in either February or March is when that's due. And that's where we set our goals, our yearly goals, our annual goals. In that meeting, what we do is we look at everything about the EOS. We look at our core focus, we look at our core values, we make sure they're right. We do a SWOT analysis of our company. We look at what's working, what's not. We look at our 10-year target and our 3-year picture. And we do several exercises to analyze the company and see where we are, and then to decide where we want to go. And then we set our goal, and we come together as a team. We decide and we debate it out, hash it out, and decide exactly what is realistic, but what stretches us. And that is our goal. Typically for the organization, there's one uniform goal that's set. So for example, it could be hit 5 million in total revenue, or grow to this many of employees. All of the goals that we set, whether it's a goal or a rock or a WPL, they all have to be very objective and quantitative, so that we can tell for sure, did we achieve it, yes, or did we achieve it, no. And that's what we do in that meeting. The annual planning meeting, we set a very definable, objective, uniform goal for the organization. Then we meet on a quarterly basis, and we set our rocks, our quarterly rocks. So in that meeting, now that the goal has been set on the annual level, we can never change that. So the goal is set, it's done. It is what it is, and it's going to be that way. The quarterly meeting, the quarterly planning meeting, then looks at that goal, and it says, okay, what do we need to do this quarter in order for that goal to happen? And then those become our rocks. I'll say one other thing. In the annual planning, we look at everything in the organization, and in that meeting we can change things like core values or core focus, which I haven't really talked a lot about in this training meeting, but it's basically, components of the organization that are very fundamental to it. In the annual planning we can change that, but in the quarterly planning we don't. In the quarterly planning we just look at the goal and say, what do we need to do this quarter in order for that to happen? And then we set a rock. Once the rock is set, once the rocks are set, and typically each leadership team member will have 3 or 5 rocks that they're working on, 3 or 4 things that they need to do in order for us all to achieve that goal. Once those rocks are set, that's the only thing that matters. So after the quarterly planning, we forget about the goal. All we care about is the rock or the rocks that we have. We take ownership of those, and that's the only focus. And you can forget about the goal because, like I mentioned earlier, if you achieve your rocks, you will achieve your goal. It's simple as that. So you don't have to worry about the goal anymore. All you do is just say, the rocks are my world. That's the only thing, and that's everything that matters to me as far as this organization is concerned. What do I need to do to achieve those rocks? Total commitment. Then once per week, we meet for 1 hour, and we have what's called a level 10 meeting. And in some parts of the organization, there may be 1 or 2 different meetings that are separately. At the time of this video, we have a sales level 10 meeting, and then we also have a regular level 10 meeting where they focus on different aspects and components of the company. The level 10 is the pulse of the organization. So just like in any organism, like in an animal, for example, there's a pulse, a heart that beats. And that beating heart is the life of that organism. meaning that as that heart beats, it pumps lifeblood to every single cell and every facet of the of that animal. That's the same way with our level 10. It is the pulse of the organization. So what we do is we set our what's called a WPL, or a weekly priority list. And it's just this constant every single week without fail. We meet and we discuss what we need to do. We send lifeblood to all the cells in the organization, and we get rid of waste. So we identify issues and problems and we get rid of them. That's what level 10 meeting does. It's extremely effective. So now on our next slide, we're going to talk about the issues list and how we use the issues lists in all of these various meetings, in our annual meeting, our quarterly planning, and our level 10 meeting, and you'll see how valuable the issues list is. So let's go ahead and go into that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Monday. I'm going to show you again what the issues list here. So basically on this program, we just have these two folders, the long-term issues list, which is called the long-term issues list, and the short-term issues list, which is called the level 10 issues list. You can just open it up and we can put issues in here. We can just write them down. This creates a very specific system by which any staff member, any leadership team member can identify problems or points of friction in the organization, and then they can put them in here and it will be solved. Because once something is listed in this issues list, the organization through EOS has a systematic way by which we'll take care of it. So once it's listed, it's going to be solved. It might not be solved today, but it will be solved. Nothing falls through the cracks. And that's what makes this program so powerful, is that literally nothing will fall through the cracks. Once you put it on here, it will get solved. Not only will it get solved, but it's going to get solved in a meeting with 3 or 4 people where everybody can put their heads together and they'll come up with a really, really good solution. So it's just really powerful system, this EOS concept that I'm teaching. So let's talk about that. Let's say there's an issue with the technician. He's not doing his services, and the office manager or somebody in the office identifies that. That needs to be logged immediately in the issues list. Immediately, because if you wait, then you might forget about it. And then if you forget about it, then that problem's just going to continue. If you've got a technician, he's not doing his services now, that's not going to get better tomorrow unless we fix it. So you got to do it right now. Now the question is, where should I log it? Well, there's 2 issues lists. There's long-term and there's a short-term issues list. Something like this with a technician that's not doing his job, that is obviously a urgent problem. So we've got to solve that right now. So we would put it in level 10 issues list. The difference between these is level 10 issues list is looked at every single week. The long-term issues list is only looked at once every 3 months. And so if it's an acute problem, something we got to deal with right now, it goes in level 10. If it's a long-term problem, something that's a problem but doesn't necessarily need to be solved today or this week, put it in long-term. Let's move on. Let's say if you have this idea. So you've got this idea for marketing or branding or something that we could do maybe through TV advertising or something like that. Where should we log that? Well, that's obviously it's an issues list item, because it's an idea, something that we need to discuss in a level 10 or in a quarterly planning. This would probably be a good example of a long-term issues list problem. So that's where you want to log it. It's important, but it's not necessarily something that we have to do this week. So log it in long-term. All right, let's go ahead and go back into here. Look at some other ideas. If you have a question that's not urgent, then maybe that should be a long-term issues list. It depends on how urgent it is. Do you need it solved in the next week or 2? Then put it in level 10. If it doesn't need to be solved for a month or so, put it in the long-term issues list. If something is not working right, or like a well-oiled machine, remember the objective of EOS is to cause our organization to function like a well-oiled machine, a finely tuned machine. And if there's something in the organization that is not a finely tuned machine, then we need to identify that and put it in level 10 or long-term issues list. We put on one of the issues lists. Again, if it gets on there, it's going to get done. If you have an idea on how to make something more efficient, more effective, we want to hear about those ideas. Put them in the issues list. The question is this a long-term issue that needs to be dealt with on a quarterly basis or right now? figure it out, make the decision, and then list it in that issues list. Every day, if you're a manager, so if you're a service manager or office manager, sales manager, every single day you need to check your WPL. And you need to look at the issues list. Just review it, see what's being put in there. And then if there is something that's on the issues list, and let's say it's Wednesday, we meet on Tuesday, and it's Wednesday, and you look at something's been logged on there, and you realize that not only is it a problem, but it can't wait for 6 more days, then we might want to do a quick impromptu meeting to solve that a little sooner. But generally speaking, once it goes in EOS, it just follows the regular cycle that we have, which is the weekly pulse of once per week. And that, for most situations, that's okay. But again, you just want to look at the issues list on a regular basis. You use Monday in these issues lists in your WPL, you use those to prioritize, and you also use them to focus and forget. You use them to forget things. Now, what do I mean by that? And what do I mean by prioritize? Well, let me explain. You can have confidence in this system. And so let's say you're having an issue with a technician. Once you list it in this level 10 issues list, you can forget about it for now, because you know that you no longer have to deal with that, or you don't have to remember it. You allow your brain to forget that, to release it, and then to focus on something else. From a neurological standpoint, you have to understand that your brain only has so much energy every day. You've only got so much focus capacity, and that is finite. Which means that if you spend your whole day trying to remember or juggle 10 things in your mind, all of that finite energy, brain power that you have, is going to be spent trying to remember stuff. When you write something down in a list, your brain can say, forget that. I don't have to remember or think about that anymore. I can delete it from my short-term storage. And then that allows the brain to take the energy that it would have otherwise spent trying to remember this thing and refocus and redirect that energy on something more productive. And so we use this system as a means by which we can prioritize and forget, not only in level 10, but also on your WPL. So if you're a manager and you've got 5 or 6 things that you need to do, what you do is you grab them and you move them around to prioritize. Say, okay, I'm going to take today, this is my WPL, which is a weekly running list. I want to do this first, so I move it up to the top. Or I want to do this first, and I can move them around. And then I can check it off, or I can change the status. And so these are waiting. I can add another one. Or if there's one task that's just really big, and it's like, I can't do that task, it's too big. So what I could do is I could delete it, and then I could go in and add 3 or 4 more tasks. So break that great big task down into smaller tasks that are completable on a daily basis. So again, what this does is the EOS system, in combination with the use of this technology called Monday.com, we use it to prioritize, to focus, and to forget. Let's go ahead and move on. The issues list format. Now, when you're in level 10, one of these folders, and you're going to add something, anytime you add a task or an idea or a problem, you want to log it correctly. And let me show you what I mean by correctly. There's a specific format that is correct, and then there's a whole bunch of formats that are incorrect. So listen up. Each task should be logged as a call to action. Should be logged as a call to action, such as decide whether to fire John Doe. That is correct. What is incorrect is John Doe. So if you go in here and you just write level 10, John Doe, that's incorrect, because we're going to come back to that and we're going to be like, who wrote this? John Doe, what are we supposed to do? But if you log it as decide whether to fire or hire John Doe, so that's very specific. Solve the problem of no capacity. That's a correct way to log. It'll save time in the meeting. Solve the problem of poor phone sales conversion as opposed to just phone sales. Another good example is consider the possibility of using a hiring service. So this is an idea. It's a possibility for growth. It's a great way to log it as opposed to just hiring service. Titles should be one line. So when you log it in here, you don't want to do 5 different lines here. You can see how these are all pretty short. So in Jamie's absence, do we have a place where we can put all bills? That's a good example. Now, if there's more that you want to elaborate on it, by all means, please do that. But what you do is you go into it here and then you write an update. And then other people can come along and write an update too. Let's go ahead and move on. One other concept. EOS is used predominantly by the leadership staff. However, everybody should understand the EOS system. Regardless of your position, you can still suggest additions to the issues lists. If you have an idea, we want to hear about it. If you have an idea, send an email to the applicable manager and you can let him know about your idea or the problem that you're having. Here's the format that you want to use. The subject in the email should be, please add to level 10. And then in the body of your email, just explain your idea. All right, for the last slide here, this is a copy from the very first slide. When we first started this video, I said EOS is a system that pushes the company to operate like a well-oiled machine. EOS creates a way in which every problem, every challenge, every part or aspect of the company that is not running smoothly can be addressed and overcome in a systematic, organized, methodical way. EOS creates an exact system in which the company can identify and capitalize on new opportunities and respond to new threats. EOS is a system by which we run our company. Let's look at these one by one and see if EOS does fulfill everything that I just said it would. Does this system push the company to operate like a well-oiled machine? Absolutely. Because it creates a systematic way by which every manager can identify things that are not well-oiled and then put it in an area, in a place where it will be solved. Does EOS create a way in which every problem, every challenge, every part or aspect of the company that's not running smoothly can be addressed? Absolutely. Every idea, every concept from the whole organization. Anybody can suggest ideas or identify problems and then put them in EOS. It's brilliant and it's extremely effective. EOS also creates an exact system in which the company can identify and capitalize on new opportunities and respond to new threats. Does it do that? Yeah, the exact system is Monday.com. And as I showed you, it's a very detailed, specific, set way where anybody can look at it and understand, and the system can operate by harnessing everybody's thoughts. EOS is the system by which we run our company. So again, this is really powerful. That's all I've got.